right. Still morning. Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think we saved this topic at an interesting time, just before people got to lunch, which means I have to make sure I move quick. But yes, today's discussion is quite interesting. Could cannabis hold the key to a SARS COVID vaccine? And where we are in 2020, if I could just set the context for my panelists, we've made amendments to our Dangerous Drugs Act. In 2015, we amended it to allow for cannabis to be handled for medicinal, scientific, and therapeutic purposes. So in our law, cannabis is in fact seen as medicine. We've created a regulatory body, which is my employer, the Cannabis Licensing Authority, that regulates this medicinal cannabis industry. That's where we are. We have licensees who either grow, process, sell, or transport cannabis for medicinal, scientific, or therapeutic purposes. And two of the panelists, one has a retail herb house and one is a cultivator. So you'll be hearing from both gentlemen as to how they feel about this topic. But what you're seeing is that we take this thing as a medicine very seriously. So it's a medicine. There's a framework that treats it as a medicine. So when you look at the question and it says, can COVID hold the key for a COVID vaccine? Yes, it's a medicine. But COVID has not just affected our health, has it? It has clearly also affected life. I mean, look at the room, you know. Our economy is affected. Tourism has been affected because of COVID. And so when we think of COVID, we can't just think of it in the context of just health. We have to think of it in the context of health and wellness as a package. It affects health and wellness. It therefore affects tourism. It affects how persons are able to travel. It affects how we will have to now recraft tourism in light of that. So the discussion today seeks to look at COVID in the context of not just a medicine, but as an economic problem that needs to be addressed. And how can cannabis work as a cure, as a medicine to all of that? That's the context. Dr. Toyang, who has over 20 years of research in cannabis as a medicine, among other plants. I mean, the man has over 25 peer-reviewed scientific publications on just plants as medicine. He will be going into the veracity as to really and truly whether or not cannabis can be seen as something to really potentially treat with COVID. So he's going to go into why cannabis is actually medicine. And then my two other panelists, one, the Mr. Wayne Isaacs, who is CEO of Sanitech. He's also, I understand, a retailer of medicinal cannabis products. Am I correct? No, he's a cultivator of medicinal cannabis. He'll be going into how he has seen the benefits of cannabis as a medicine and has taken the step forward as a licensee to cultivate it. And we'll be going into standards and that sort of thing. And then we're going to speak to Mr. Charles, yeah, who is my retailer of medicinal cannabis products. And he'll be telling you what kind of products his consumers who have prescriptions and recommendations from doctors, what they say about the impact that cannabis has had on their health and wellness. But importantly, all of this in the context of economic change. So Dr. Toyang, speak to us a little bit about cannabis as actual medicine.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Reed, for the introduction, and welcome to my fellow panelists. Yeah, this is quite an interesting topic for discussion at this time. I was actually thrilled when I saw the topic, could cannabis be the vaccine for SARS CoV-2, which is a virus? And I was like, oh, wow, this is quite interesting, because traditionally when you think of a vaccine, you think of taking that shot, on your arm. And whether you take it every year or every so often, that is the traditional sense of a vaccine. But now with science evolving and with the introduction that Mr. Reed has just given us, all of these things have to be seen, from a very holistic point of view. So coming back to, cannabis as a potential vaccine for coronavirus. Right now, we do have, dozens of vaccines that are being developed. The top of the line, you have like the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, you have the AstraZeneca and Oxford vaccine. Johnson & Johnson, they are also working on their own vaccine. Of course, you have the Chinese where the virus, originated. They're also working on a vaccine, including the Russians. Now, let us just assume that these vaccines, like the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, that they work. We know that even if they work, we already know that even in the developed world, there's a big problem as to how these vaccines can reach the population that is already in the developed world, not to talk of other countries like in the Caribbean, in Africa, where it will actually be a very, very tough task to get these vaccines to reach those continents. So this leaves, developing countries with a serious problem to look as to how, until the vaccine reaches them, what solutions do they have that they can begin to use, on their people? And I'm happy that Jamaica, sees cannabis as a potential solution, not just for the economy, but also for the treatment of this virus, which has already killed hundreds of thousands of people. We are excited because, from our research group, I'm sure most of you know Dr. Henry Lowe, who's been leading research in the area of cannabis for decades now. In our group, we have actually been able to show that cannabis, not the whole plant, but components of cannabis does have pharmaceutical activity against viruses. Actually, our group was one of the first to publish on the activity of cannabis against the hepatitis C virus. And actually, just a few weeks back, we received a patent on that from the U.S. Patents and Trademarks Office.
All right, Dr. Tayang, just break that down a little bit. You said your study has shown thus far the potential for cannabis to be used to treat pharmaceutical ailments as a result of COVID.
Okay. Yeah, okay, yes. So that's what I'm coming to. So our research is actually focusing on developing cannabis products as a treatment or as a pharmaceutical treatment for viruses. And we have already established potential treatment against hepatitis C, and we have also demonstrated activity against the coronaviruses. At this moment, we have already done the basic laboratory studies that showed that activity, not only against the virus, but against some of the comorbidities that patients suffer when they're diagnosed with a severe coronavirus infection.
Such as?
Yeah. So we are talking of things like the cytokine storm, and which should not be, surprising. We already know that products like CBD and the THC, they have anti-inflammatory properties. And what are the anti-inflammatory properties? How do they target inflammation?
Right. So if a person is feeling pain and that sort of thing, you're saying this will help to alleviate some of that?
Exactly. Yeah. So this will help to alleviate some of that. So that is broadly speaking, because I mean, the CBD and the THCs are the well-known compounds that have medicinal
What
properties in cannabis.
what
But our
about
group has
okay?
gone beyond that. Uh-huh.
What about strengthening? Is there any potential in cannabis to strengthen possibly the immune system?
Yes, we have actually shown that there are molecules in cannabis that can strengthen your immune system. Of course, when we talk of strengthening immune system, it's like taking a vitamin C every day. It boosts your immune system and it can help you to fight the common cold. Yeah, so there are components or compounds in the cannabis plant that we are studying that show that they have potential to boost the immune system.
Okay. Um, Dr. Tayang, in the Jamaican context, where most persons don't really, when they think of cannabis as let's say medicine, it's more the therapeutic relief of it. A man will go and want to smoke a spliff, or probably the most him will do is take a 2 drops of him grandmother white rum potion with the ganja that is soaked in it, right? 2 sips and that cure everything. How do we really, what things do we have generally, and how we use cannabis generally that you would consider to be medicinal use of cannabis?
Well, that's a good question. I think I'll probably leave that for those that run a cannabis, medicinal cannabis retail services, to talk as to that, because they have the formulations that they have prepared, those that are approved by the Cannabis Licensing Authority that people know, that they can use. So sitting here, I can actually only talk as to the science behind
Right.
the efficacy of the products that come from cannabis, and the pharmaceutical process that we're going through now to get those products, run clinical trials and have them registered with the Ministry of Health or the FDA and things like that. But I mean, I can say without a doubt, if those products that are being prepared by retailers, processors and retailers,
Yes.
if they maintain quality and if they are able to give them at the right dose, and they're taken not just as inhalation, not just by smoking it, certainly there'll be some medical benefit. All we need to do is to have some clinical trials that can ascertain to the fact that long-term use of it, gives good benefit to protect the patient from the coronavirus and other viruses.
All right, good. So what we've heard from Dr. Toyang is the efficacy surrounding cannabis as medicine. There's clearly research, scientific research, that shows that cannabis is in fact medicine. And as you would have heard the doctor say, there's potential in cannabis to really and truly treat with things related to COVID, things that would cause inflammation. So you're talking about things that will cause pain. A lot of people will tell you that when one of the common symptoms is just this achy kind of feeling in your body. You just feel a bit pain up. You can't really move. Cannabis is good to, as the doctor said, help to remove some of that inflammation. And inflammation actually could be a source of high fever, which is another symptom of COVID. So you're seeing that in real truth and science. We're not just up here trying to advertise ganja as a thing. No, the science is showing and has shown the thing is a medicine. And there's clear research that has gone into it. So that meanders nicely into Mr. Charles Grant. I want to speak to him. He's a owner and general manager of Oja Retail Products, yes?
No,
Pardon?
no, just the general manager.
Just a general manager. All right. No promotion before time. All right. I've got it. But just to set the context, just recently, the Bureau of Standards has promulgated standards related to the handling of cannabis, from cultivation to packaging. there's standards for labeling, so to ensure that all packages that are attached to any cannabis products have proper warnings as it relates to who can access it. So a minor can't access it. Clear THC content warning. How it is stored, there are standards that have been promulgated for that. So I want you to understand, Jamaica, that our regulatory system for ganja as medicine is properly thought out. It's properly structured and is on the cusp of really being probably one of, if not the best in the world. So with that context in mind, we go to Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, speak to us a little bit about how your retail herb house operates as a licensee. What is that experience like?
All right, so morning, everyone. So the experience in terms of our operation is that we do high research into every strain that we carry. So when a new patient comes in, and whether it's their first time using cannabis or they're a seasoned cannabis user, they would then speak to a physician and then basically disclose what conditions they have, and then the physician would then make a recommendation to them as that they can use the medical cannabis. So, for example, someone who is suffering from depression would typically be recommended to use a strain that is sativa dominant, which is known to imbue effects of happiness in terms of a patient.
And in terms of the efficacy, or let me not use that kind of word. In terms of the physician that makes the recommendation or prescription, is this physician somebody that is approved by the Ministry of Health?
Yes, definitely, of course. The only way.
Okay. And does the person, so it's COVID time, so does the person actually going to see the doctor face to face?
No.
So how is it done?
It's done via call.
Okay.
Or Skype.
Interesting. So, all right.
Yes.
And once the patient sees the doctor via the Skype, what then happens? Walk us through that process.
Okay, the doctor then asks them how long they have been using cannabis for, what their medical reason of usage for, whether that be anxiety, Crohn's disease, chronic pain, which is, as I said, one of the symptoms of COVID-19, one of the after effects as well for
Right.
people who have recovered.
Right.
ALS, multiple sclerosis. So once they have disclosed that to their physician, the physician then asks them if they have a history of any mental illness.
Right.
Because that, of course, would discredit you in terms of being a patient, because we're doing this thing professionally and we don't want anybody to get hurt.
Right. So important point to note there, members of the audience, as you'd have heard Mr. Grant say, what the doctor assesses it's not an automatic once you go to a retail herb house to get some cannabis as medicine that you're gonna get it. It's not a ganja shop. It's not something where you just go and once you have your money you're gonna get it. No. You have to go through an assessment by a doctor, and the doctor has to, because all things must be considered before one uses anything. Yeah. So the doctor says, as Mr. Grant would have said, have you any previous record or understanding or memory of having anything related to mental illness? And again, I think that just works perfectly because we are talking about health and wellness, not just physically, but mentally. So again, the very questions that the doctors are asking have to be all-encompassing. And it's a process that is in keeping very much with the standards that are recommended and prescribed by the Ministry of Health. All right, so the natural question that people will then want to ask Mr. Grant, so how is business in light of COVID? What has been happening in that regard? Has business slowed down? Has business increased? What's happening? Or improved?
All right. So when the COVID pandemic just struck, we hadn't quite opened yet, but then the restrictions trickled down before there was a huge spike. So when we finally did open, we had lots of customers, stocking up because they're hearing about new research coming to light as well. about the medicinal benefits of cannabis. Especially people tend to compare CBD tinctures,
Yes.
such as the Prana P5 or the Oja CBD, what we carry, because the studies show, right, and it's pretty promising, that they have analgesic properties, they boost your immune system, as you
Yes.
stated. So that is a high buying, a high purchase item at the store.
So,
And
yes, good. No,
yeah, then
continue,
business kind
continue.
of
Yeah.
slowed down a bit
Yeah.
when the restrictions came up again, but since we have now extended the time to 9 p.m.,
Yes.
business is good.
Yes. So good. So we understand that. And again, I am here as an advocate for this linkage between tourism and ganja, because I believe, as our moderator would have said to us, this is a natural resource that we have, and we have it in abundance. And I'm going to go to Sir Isaacs in that regard in a few. He will tell us about the abundance in the natural resources that we have in ganja. But this linkage it's almost synonymous with tourism. I'm telling you, yesterday, I spoke to a tourist, a lady, she came from Ohio. I kept my 6 feet distance and wore my mask. And she, so I was asking her what she expected upon coming to Jamaica. And she's like, yes, I want to have the beach, but yeah, I want to try some ganja. She was just very clear about it. She wants to try some ganja. And I began to speak to her about why, why do you want to try some ganja? It's just that, like, what you've heard. And she was telling me that her boss actually came to Jamaica a couple months ago and went back to America and was telling her that when you go to Jamaica, you must try the weed there. It is so good. That story could have easily turned in a negative way. That lady could have had a mental problem that completely caused her to go psychotic and freak out at the what I'm saying is, this is something that they come here for. That therapeutic relief that is very much a part of mental wellness is what they come here for. When we say come to Jamaica and feel all right, that feel all right part is what they're coming here for. And if you're not meeting that demand legally, they're going to find it illegally. And so you're missing out on the potential revenue that you can collect from that naturally and tax it. And as you heard from Mr. Grant, it's a business that is doing well in COVID. Not many businesses are. And also, we have standards that can treat with the efficacy of the product. So you protect your tourism image by the efficacy of the product that you are regulating. So again, it's a natural linkage that I think that must happen. Mr. Isaacs, speak to the members of the audience and our viewers online about what it is that you do as a cultivator of medicinal cannabis. And how is it different, you think, if you can tell them, from what would happen in the illegal space?
Okay. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
I'm the only one who got to say good afternoon because everybody else started speaking when it was morning. And I bring you greetings from the greater Toronto area. For those of you who think it's too hot in Jamaica today, it's a nice chilly 10 degrees here, so enjoy the sun. Okay?
We're thankful.
So from the cultivation point of view, there are just a couple of things I'd like to say. Cultivating cannabis in Jamaica is a bit of a dream. I own a company called Green Stripe Naturals here in Toronto, and we have invested heavily in building out a 20-acre cultivation facility in Clarendon. Okay, and the name Green Stripe was actually chosen on purpose because the national beer of Jamaica obviously
is the red stripe. I see that.
So the national brand of cannabis is obviously going to be
Green Stripe.
Right?
Makes sense.
Right. So it was chosen on purpose. So as far as I'm going to address the question in two different ways. So as far as the COVID-19 situation is concerned, what we're looking to do is we're looking to start cultivating those products, and we're waiting for guys like Ngay and Charles to tell us specifically NGA, to tell us what those particular strains are, what molecule mix they're looking for, all that, we need to get the science behind it, okay? So that guys like myself, the cultivators, can actually start, getting into proper strain selection, for example, determining what types of strains are needed, and then what's needed for the distribution to the end user. In this particular case, things like tinctures versus smokables, right? Those are different cultivation issues that we have to address differently, right? So from the cultivation point of view, as far as COVID is concerned, we're actively looking at, things like making sure that we have a broad amount of strain selection. We're also looking at having more of the CBD type products, because again, just to relate to what's been mentioned by my other two co-panelists here, it has been shown, CBD has been shown to have some efficacy in terms of reducing inflammation, and inflammation is obviously a big part of getting ill, and the progression of your illness. So all of that actually, it's not just a matter of putting some seeds in the ground, when you're planting cannabis, when you're cultivating cannabis. It's not a matter of just putting seeds in the ground.
Right.
It's a matter of having a strategic approach, especially in a COVID, so that the product that you ultimately produce can go towards addressing, the medicinal concerns, that are affecting the population.
What standards do you cultivate your products?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So we cultivate under full organic standards. Organic tends to be a bit of a moving target depending on where you are.
Right.
But what we try to do is, what we do is we cultivate under full organic standards. Okay. We are hoping to get up to GMP standards, GMP certification standards in the near future. But again, that is largely going to be dictated by what the market demands and what the scientific community requires. Right? We are set up on a 20-acre farm. We've got plenty of land mass to grow numerous varieties and numerous strains of cannabis to service the medicinal industry. And but again, it is a coordinated effort in terms of making sure that whatever we're putting in the ground, is going to be effective scientifically, and it's going to be relevant to what the ultimate end user wants to buy from the dispensaries.
Absolutely. And that is exactly what it's about as it relates to trade. It's about supply and demand. Quality supply, constant supply that meets the demand. That is how we ensure that the industry has rigor. Let me state some statistics, and I want my panelists to engage me in this regard as well. There's an estimated 1.2 billion people worldwide, 1.2 billion people worldwide, suffering from medical conditions for which cannabis has shown to be of therapeutic value. The global total cannabis market, regulated and illicit, is estimated to be $34 billion US. I repeat, the global total cannabis market is estimated to be $34 billion US. The regional markets that have control mostly and are posited to benefit mostly from that are Asia, with 132.9 billion, North America, 85.6 billion, Europe, 68.5, Africa, 37.3, and Latin America, 9.8. Jamaica is a major transit and transshipment hub to all those routes. And I can tell you, because I'm literally looking at the final draft of the import-export transit and transshipment regulations, that we can collect money from what is going through us. Not even what we are exporting directly, but what will be passing through us, we will be able to collect with our regulations as far as medical cannabis. But more importantly, those are markets that clearly show that there's a demand for cannabis. There's a clear demand for cannabis. And I have statistics that show that coffee and cocoa have dropped down during COVID. My statistic says that coffee declined by 41% and cocoa by 44%. So what you're seeing is that the other crops that we look to that are value added to even the tourism industry are on the down, but on the converse, you have cannabis that is on the rise. And with the coming in now of the Democrats as opposed to the Republicans, it's anticipated that our closest neighbor with a huge market for cannabis is anticipated as going pro-liberal when cannabis, where cannabis is concerned. So what I'm saying is that there's a clear demand for where we can go. What would you have to say to that kind of outlook, and what you would want to see more as a linkage between tourism and cannabis in that regard? That's my question to the panelists. Dr. Toyang, let me begin with you. And we're wrapping up, so it's just a quick 2 sentences and we're out. What is it that you want to see as a linkage between tourism and medical cannabis?
Thank you very much. I mean, from my side as a scientist, the key thing is quality. If there's a particular strain, that has been identified, to have the kind of potency that the patients would desire, there is a need to have a consistent production and maintenance of the quality of that particular strain.
Consistent production and maintenance of quality. Good.
Yeah.
Tourism, we hear that. Linkages, we hear that. Mr. Isaacs, what is it that you would love to see as far as that linkage between tourism and medical cannabis?
I think Dr. Tonya is exactly correct. What we have to do, especially from the cultivation side, is to make sure of a couple of things. A, we cultivate those strains that the market's demanding.
Yes.
B, that we're cultivating it with the highest standards and the highest quality.
Yes.
And C, that we have the reliability, of the supply, right? Because, what you don't want, is to be able to have, for example, Gorilla Glue on the shelf, for 2 days, right? So I think those are the things that we need to address, overall, right. From the tourism point of view.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Grant, over to you. How do you close the race? Don't let me down.
No. All right, so I believe, as Dr. Toyang and Mr. Isaacs has said, that we need to maintain quality, but also for posterity.
Yes.
We must now invest in brand Jamaica. We should stop shying away from the fact that we grow the best cannabis in the world.
Yes.
Let's be brazen with it, be proud of it, and allow for the economic growth that can come from it. Because in spas in North America right now, they're charging $300 US for a CBD massage. Why should that not be in Jamaica?
Absolutely.
We are the best.
Absolutely. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for joining us for today's discussion on cannabis as being the cure for COVID, or a key in the cure for COVID. And again, cannabis is medicine. When we say that it is the healing of the nation, we mean it. Come to Jamaica and feel all right, we mean it. Thank you. Health and wellness tourism is it. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just the content of that discussion left me feeling high. The possibilities are just amazing, and I sincerely hope that, because we have been persecuted for this product for so long, now that the restrictions have been lifted, I hope we don't allow other countries to run ahead of us, because we paid a heavy price, and now it's time for us to reap the benefits from this product. So we're going to be talking financing in just a little bit. Oh, question. Yeah, because I'm sure there were a ton of questions that, yeah. Yeah, so you want to just, come back for a moment, Sheldon, and let's take a few questions, because I'm sure there are tons of questions, that the audience would like to ask you to field.
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, apologies. Right, sorry, questions. And panelists, apologies as well. Yes.
We have a few questions from our online viewers. The first one is, are there strains of cannabis being cultivated here in Jamaica that are solely found here? There was a mention this morning of plants that we have that are indigenous to Jamaica. We wanted to know if with cannabis we have some strains that are, definitely our own.
All right, I would start with Dr. Toyang and then over to Sir Isaacs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sheldon. I think I'll let Mr. Isaacs take that question.
Okay, all right. Sir Isaacs, on to you.
Yeah, I'll pass it on to Mr. Grant. No. Yeah, are there landrace strains in Jamaica? Yes, there are. Are they widely used and cultivated for the purposes of being sold in a dispensary or being used for medicinal purposes? That's a different question. Yeah. But a lot of the original strains in Jamaica, or a lot of the landrace strains in Jamaica, they exist more in say the Rasta culture, okay, and within the Rasta communities, right? And they're more used for sacramental purposes as opposed to commercial purposes, right? They are there. I don't really see a lot of them on the retail side. Mr. Grant can speak to that. I don't really see a lot of it on the retail side. I see a lot of people representing that they have some of these strains, but they're not. I haven't seen a lot of them out there commercially.
Right.
Yes. I've only seen two so far, to be honest. I've seen lamb's bread, and I've seen white ice, which is indigenous to St. Elizabeth. Very nice strain. Yeah. But not many, as I said, they seem to be held within the confines of the Rasta community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes for good reason, because, they just don't want a lot of these to become, hybrids, or they don't want them to be crossbred and all this sort of stuff. So,
exactly.
A lot of those strains are protected because they want to protect the integrity of the original landrace strains in Jamaica.
Right. And an important point on that note, which is a very good question that you asked, it raises again, and the discussions yesterday it would have come up about taking proper ownership in our intellectual property surrounding some of our value-added products. So, like for instance, the name lamb's bread. We need to go and trademark that, before France go trademark that too. We need to. These are things that we need to look at, and then I'm sure Dr. Toyang wouldn't want to get into it, but again, he has patents. So I can tell you legally from where I sit, I have been saying that we need to allow the patenting of plant varieties in Jamaica. Currently, we can't really do it. So we can't really patent lamb's bread, but we should be able to patent lamb's bread. Right? So intellectual property plays a very important role in strengthening our strains. So thank you for that.
And we have another question.
Sure.
There was another participant asking, what are some of the medicinal cannabis? How can the patient get access? You spoke already about the doctor, and they can just walk into a dispensary and get it. But what strains can the patient take? Is it just recommended by the doctor, or do they get the information when they go to the dispensary?
Well, I'll pass that one to Sir Grant. But before I do, yes, what generally happens is, let me know. I don't want to speak for Sir Isaacs, for Sir Grant. Let me make Sir Grant speak. What actually happens?
Okay, what actually happens is the doctor makes the recommendation, right?
Yes.
So when they get to the side of the Budtenders now, which are well-trained connoisseurs in cannabis, and we're
hold on, pause. What is a Budtender?
So
Sir Grant, pause. Who is a Budtender? Budtender?
It's the cannabis version of a bartender.
A Budtender.
Right? Yes. It's a customer service rep.
Okay, Budtender. All right.
Right? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So they're well-trained connoisseurs in terms of the topic of cannabis.
Yes.
So depending on your ailment or malady, they'll make a decent recommendation for you. So for example, right now, if you were supposed to come into Oja and you are suffering from chronic pain, we'd make the recommendation that you go with our wedding cake, which is an indica strain. And indica strains are known to be characterized by their benefits to relieve pain.
So when,
yeah.
right. And you see, when you add that to a nice Bob Marley song, when the music hits you, you feel no pain.
Exactly. We had that yesterday at one of our sessions. So thank you so much for answering those questions from our online audience.
All right, thank you. Thank you, panelists, again. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right.